John. I'm a developer relations engineer here at Google.
And I'm Justin. I'm an engineer on the framework team at Google.
And yeah, so we're really excited to be here. We have a brand new code lab for you. And if you've played around with animations, this will be a nice little refresher. And also, we're going to show some more advanced techniques towards the end. So we've got a code lab you can actually follow along with. So if you follow this link at the top, if you go to codelabs.developers.google.com and then /advanced-flutter-animations. So that's going to be the first step. If you're following along, we're just going to go to that link. And while you're getting that up, I'm just going to give a quick overview of kind of what we're going to cover and some of the stuff that Flutter provides for animation. So what we're going to see in the code lab, we're going to see implicit animations, which are implicitly animated widgets. So these are going to be subclasses of the implicitly animated widget class in Flutter. And we're going to see how to use that. And then we're going to move on from there to situations where you might need an explicit animation. So we're going to see some examples of that. And that's going to be these widgets that take an animation type. So we're going to see what that looks like. And that animation type is a class of represents a running animation. So there's a current value and a target value and that the animation's running to. So we're going to really get into what that looks like. And we're going to get into animation controllers, which you've probably heard of before. You've probably seen that before, but we're going to see a fun example of how to use that. And we're going to talk about some other animation types. So we're going to build a little quiz game, and we're going to add animations to it. So at the end of the code lab, we're going to take an app with no animations, and we're going to see how to add some fun animations, like a card flip effect, maybe some stars that bounce in and out, and some custom transitions. And Justin, I think you want to show some new features you've been working on. So you want to talk about that real quickly?
Yeah, sure. In a few places in the code lab, I'm going to talk a little bit about predicted back, a new Android feature, some work we've been doing with that, and how it affects the kind of animations that we'll see in this app. And also a little bit about open container and how those kind of animations relate to predicted back. And lastly, we have a few changes that are still open in a PR in Flutter that are enabling some new changes to what you can do with route transitions. So I'll give a preview of what changes are coming there.
Yeah, and I think one thing you mentioned there that I forgot to mention is we're going to see how to use the animations package. So that's a package that the Flutter team provides that gives you pre-built fancy material animations. So let's get into it. Has everybody got the code lab up? Thumbs up? Good? Okay, yeah, we'll give one more minute here.
No, okay, I just have to get the code, that's why.
Yes, so we're going to get the development environment set up. So to see the predictive bath stuff, it would help if you have an Android device that you can plug in and debug, but if you don't, that's totally okay. We can show that on screen here. You can use iOS, Android, Linux, Mac OS, Windows. And one thing we're going to do first is we're just going to, everybody run Flutter Doctor, just to make sure we're all good to go. You should have a fairly recent version of the SDK. If you have the latest stable version, that's going to be the best. So for predicted back. And yeah, so looks like I did everything right here. My internet might be a little slow. There we go. Okay. All right. Okay. Everybody good? Flutter Doctor's good for everybody? Cool. All right. So I'm going to run the starter app here. So I'm going to go over here, and in my IDE, I'm running Android Studio. I'm just going to run the app here. Give that a minute to start up. All right, so if you're in the step 1 folder of the code lab, you should see an app kind of like this. We don't have a lot of animation yet. Oops, I am running the wrong version here. I am on the wrong one. Sorry about that. Let's open this one up, run the app. Thanks for bearing with me here. Okay, so now we should see an app that's kind of more bare bones here. There's not a lot of animation happening. I'm answering the questions. It's showing me the correct answer each time, and it's showing me a score using a modal dialog. That's a great place to start. I just want to do a quick tour of the code here. So we have our main function. That's going to show our home screen, which is this Flutter quiz title. Once the button is pressed, we're going to push a new material page route. So that's going to show the question screen. So in this home screen, we go to the question screen. So that's what that question screen looks like. And that's in the question screen file here. Can everybody see this? Is this big enough? Is the font big enough?
Just a bit bigger.
All right. Let's do this. Let's go maybe 15, maybe 16. All right, let's start with 18. The way this is working is it's using a model view model pattern. So we've got kind of a listenable builder that's taking advantage of this view model that's kind of controlling the logic of the game. So if you're interested in that, feel free to check that out. There's some functions like getting the next question, checking for the right answer, things like that. And that's all utilized by the question screen to kind of animate the app here, show the score at the bottom, things like that. But this is about animation, so I don't want to dwell too much on that. It's just kind of a place to get started here. So hopefully that's good for everybody. The model here is just a list of questions at the bottom, defined in Dart and generated with Gemini. And we have a question type that the view model is using to display the current question and all the answers. Does that make sense to everybody? Good? Cool. All right, let's get started with our next step. That's the tour of the code. We're going to do our first implicit animation fix. So Justin, do you want to kind of tell us about implicit animations?
Sure, yeah. So yeah, we're going to start here by changing our scoreboard a little bit, which in the app you might have seen is just like a little text representation of which question and what your score is, and make it a little bit fancier, put those stars in there and do some animations with that. And we're doing that with implicit animations. So what an implicit animation is when you really just provide two values and a duration and let Flutter do all of the work for you in terms of doing the animation, updating things at every frame and things like that. In other places you may have seen implicit animations, say in like CSS, you can do kind of the same thing and provide a duration, and then anytime you change a certain property, it will be animated automatically for you. And so Flutter kind of provides a similar thing through the implicitly animated widget class. And it has a bunch of, as you see, common implicitly animated widgets that we provide that we think people would probably commonly use. Where you can just do things like change the alignment of something in the position on a page, for example, and when you change the alignment, the child will animate between two different positions just based on the duration. So very simple stuff. A lot of other things you might see like position, opacity, padding, etc.
All right, so I'm going to copy paste this libscoreboard.dart file. So this is a scoreboard. So we're going to create a new file, libscoreboard.dart. New file, scoreboard.dart. I'm going to paste in this class. Nothing's animated yet, right, Justin? So how do I make this more animated?
All right, so we have our scoreboard.
Oh, let's hook it up. Yeah, let's hook it up to the status bar.
Yeah.
Right. So let's go back to our status bar in our question screen. Let's find our status bar. There it is. So we want to replace this with our scoreboard instead of a row. So I'm just let's put the scoreboard in the row. Okay. And we're going to import. I'm going to type Alt-Enter to kind of get the import that I need here, which is in my project, so we have a auto completion for that. And we've got our scoreboard. And let's see what that looks like when we hot reload here. Make sure that's working. Looks like we have an error here. 1 second. We got some copy paste issue. There we go. Now if I hot reload, we've got some stars, and if I answer a question, the star, lights up, but it's not animated.
Right.
So the next step, we're going to add an implicitly animated widget called animated star. Okay, let's copy that. Paste that in here. All right. So what is this doing?
Yeah, so the magic, as we were talking about, is in these implicitly animated widgets, so animated scale. In this case, it's one that's built into the Flutter framework. And what we're providing, like I said before, a value, in this case it's scale, because that's what we're going to animate, and a duration for how long it will take to transition between the two values. And so when I say two values, I mean really the previous value and whatever value you set it to. So anytime you change the scale, it will run an animation for the length of duration from one value to the next. And that's what I mean by implicit animations.
Okay, cool. So I've copy pasted the animated star here at the bottom of my scoreboard, and I just need to use it in the scoreboard. So let's delete our icon, because now our icon is in our animated star. And our animated star takes a key, which is optional, and the is active. So I think beforehand we were saying if the score is less than I plus 1, then we're going to show a certain color, otherwise we're going to show another color. So really what we need here is active, I, or score. I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to copy this. Is active, score is greater than 1. All right. So everybody cool with that? Looks good. And we're going to hot reload. Now when I answer a question, if I answer it correctly, I don't know if you saw that at the bottom, but it's animating in. I have to make sure I answer the question correctly. Which widget is used to rebuild its child whenever an animation changes? Does anybody know the answer to this?
Probably builder.
That's right. So the modal dialog showed, and then the star animated from one state to the other. So Justin, I think we wanted to talk a little bit about like what's actually happening under the hood when that happens. Like what's going on there?
Yeah, I wanted to get into that. As we've seen right here, it's all pretty straightforward and pretty hidden from you, right? We're just looking at an animated scale widget, we wrap something with it, and then like magic happens. But as Flutter developers, like actually when I saw this the first time, I was first getting into Flutter animations, I saw like all of these kind of classes, that list that we saw in the docs, and I thought, well, can't I just, like I know how to call set state, I know how to change values, can't I just call set state like once every frame and change the scale myself? And the answer is yeah, that's pretty much what's happening under the hood. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but basically that's what, if you drill down into animated scale, that's what's happening. It's taking those two values, it's doing a little bit of math, and it's making sure that a set state gets called once per frame as the animation progresses from 0 to duration. And so that's basically what's happening under the hood. Like as Flutter developers, we kind of understand set state and re-render, and that's basically just what's happening here. And I hope we'll kind of like revisit this a little bit as we get into other kinds of animation and we build up into Flutter's built-in animation widgets. We can talk more about like how it's all just built on top of calling set state.
Cool. All right. So this animation is kind of boring, right? It just kind of linearly changes from one state to the other. The color changes instantly, which we'll deal with later. So what we want to do is we want to use tweens to make this a little more interesting. So what is a tween? Well, a tween is a representation of an interpolation between two values. So you know, what you might try is an animated container to change the color. You could try an animated icon here, but animated icon only supports a few icons. So our star icon, like how are we going to change the color? It's kind of tricky. So what we're going to use is this thing called Tween Animation Builder, and that's going to let us specify our own tween that's going to be animated. And that tween is going to be a color tween. And so we're going to tell the framework, I have color 1, which is gray, and I want to animate it to color 2, which is yellow. All right. So I'm going to copy paste these new lines here. Actually, I think I'll just copy a few of these and then wrap my icon with a Tween Animation Builder. So that's the nice thing about the way Flutter is composable, is that I can have one animation, implicitly animated widget, and I can have another animation that I'm using to control the color. So I'm going to select my icon here with my cursor, and I'm going to double tap Shift in IntelliJ. You can bring up your VS Code actions as well, and I'm going to type wrap with widget. And I'm going to specify, I'm going to wrap with a builder. And I'm going to use a Tween Animation Builder instead. Okay. Now our Tween Animation Builder has a few extra properties. Let's command click on that to see what those are. It looks like I need a duration and a builder. And this builder has 3 parameters, a widget context, a build context, and a value and a child. Okay, so we'll talk about that. So let's type value child to make sure we're passing static analysis. Let's paste in our duration, and we're just going to use the same duration that our animated star is already using. And we've got our color tween here. Now, a color tween is provided by the framework, and it's a simple class that just takes 2 values and knows how to interpolate between them. So pretty simple idea there. And the start color is going to be when the star is deactivated. The end color is going to be either the activated color or the deactivated color, depending on whether that's active. So the trick we're using here is that Tween Animation Builder will always rerun whenever this end value of the tween changes. So that's kind of the trick we're using. All right, so I'm going to hot reload that. I'm going to try to answer this question correctly this time. There we go. All right, let's try that. Let's make sure that worked here. Okay, that didn't work. I might have to hot reload that, hot restart. Let's get our run menu up here, and let's hot restart that. Okay, what's going on here? And I can't answer these questions right. Okay, so this is a good opportunity. We're going to slow down the animation. So I'm going to open DevTools. These instructions are at the bottom of this step of the code lab if you want to follow along. But I'm just going to click this Open Flutter DevTools button. I'm going to go over to my Flutter inspector. I'm going to enable slow animations. And slow animations is great. It helps you debug animations. So you see the transition there was slower. So the tween button, when I press that, yeah, it's not animating correctly here. Let's go back to our code lab, make sure we're not missing anything here. Oh, I made an obvious mistake here. I'm still setting the color to the previous thing here. I forgot to take this value that the Tween Animation Builder widget provides, and I forgot to put it in to this location here. So now my icon is going to take whatever value is being passed from my Tween Animation Builder, which will change over time. Okay. So now when I press this, after hot reloading, it's kind of in between gray and yellow, and it's turning to yellow. So we figured out the problem there. Thanks for hanging in there. Let's keep going.
Can I get into tweens a little bit before we move to curves?
Of course, yeah.
So I just wanted to quickly go back as we were talking about like stuff under the hood and talk about tweens for a little bit. So if you think about the first animation we did, which was a scale, I think we were scaling from 1 to 2 or something like that. If you think about doing that yourself, like we were talking about maybe a timer that runs once every 16 milliseconds or something like that, and then calculating the value between 1 and 2 at each step of that timer, like you could do that. It's kind of straightforward math. But in this case, what if you wanted to do it between gray and yellow? How would you calculate what value the color should be in between? And it's totally doable as well. Some of you may have done this kind of thing and know how to do it, but actually like the RGB color space is basically a cube. You can position a color within the cube, 2 colors, draw a line between the 2, and then have a function that gives you a value along that line between the 2 values in a 3-dimensional cube, and that's how you get those colors in between. But like I was saying, whenever you do these kind of things yourself, it's hard. You'd have to write a lot of that math yourself, and it's going to get really messy if you're doing that with a lot of different things. So this is what tween wraps for you. It provides an easy way for you to interpolate between values of different types really easily, does that math, and you don't have to worry about it.
Cool, yeah, so basically what you're saying is like a tween is normally just one value, but it can also be multiple values. In the case of a color, it can be like X, Y axis.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a great point. All right, everybody cool with tweens? Everybody caught up on the code lab that wants to be caught up? Okay, cool. Okay, so our animation could be a little better still. Now we're going to add a curve. Do you want to talk a little bit about curves, or do you want me to share?
I can do that.
Okay.
So just related to what I was just saying, if you're interpolating between 2 values over some duration, it's pretty easy mathematically to just go from like 0 to 1 directly in a linear way. If you picture that like curve between the 2 RGB values just in a straight line, and then moving in a straight like velocity over time is pretty simple. But what a curve does is it lets you move basically like in an accelerating or decelerating rather than just a straight velocity from one point to another. You can move in a way like this, for example, where you start out going a little bit slower along that line within a 3-dimensional cube and then speed up at the end. And the result is that animations feel a little bit more like they are in the real world. They feel like they have inertia or a little bit more bouncy and bubbly. And I think that's exactly what our star needs. If you saw in the last animation, it kind of just like very robotically moved to get bigger and then stopped. And I think if we add a curve, it could look a lot better. And thankfully, Flutter does the math for you again.
Yeah, and so as a developer, one thing I just want to point out here, this curves API documentation is awesome. Go here if you want to learn about curves and find the right curve for your animation. We've got every single curve generating a graph here of what it looks like, and we've got some little examples of the translation, rotation, scale, velocity. So that is super cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose a special curve that I like a lot, which is this elastic in-out curve. I'm going to just define that as a field on my animated star class. Then I'm going to pass the curve to both of my implicitly animated widgets here. So I can just add a name parameter curve, give it my curve, and for the tween animation builder, I'm going to give that a curve. And then I'm going to reload that and click next. And we should hopefully know the answer to this one by now. So now you can see it bounced in. I'm going to turn off slow animations and show that one more time. Let's figure out why that didn't do that. There we go. All right, so animated builder, boom, it popped in. Everybody see that? So that looked a lot better. Our star, it gives visual interest to the user, it lets them know something changed. It looks natural, and it's a little bit better, I think. So everybody cool with that? Everybody got the tweens and curves? All right. So we already showed how to enable slow animations, but that's a good tip there. All right. So we're going to look at explicit animations now. And really what we're talking about with explicit animations is something that takes an animation type as a parameter and applies an effect. So what is an animation type? Well, it's a lower level type that the implicitly animated widgets are using under the hood, kind of what Justin was saying. It takes a value with a status, and whatever the current status is, it animates to the target value that the user just set. So the value is set immediately, and the change to that value is shown over time. So in one frame, I'm changing the value, and then in the subsequent frames, that value is being shown to the user as a interpolated value. So let's go back here. We have this question card widget. I'm going to show that. I'm going to find the location of that. And it just takes a question, and whenever the question changes, it just re-renders a text widget with the new question. But it would be nice if we could kind of animate the question card whenever the string changes. There's a great tool for this in the framework. It's called Animated Switcher. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my card. I'm going to double tap Shift, and I'm going to do Wrap with Widget. I'm going to type Animated Switcher. And our animated switcher takes a duration. Let's give it 300 milliseconds. That sounds good. And that's it. That's all we have to do to get this animated switcher working. And we're going to use this to show explicitly animated widgets. So I hot reloaded the app, and I'm going to click Next. Oops, it didn't work. Let's see, why didn't that work? Let's double check that. Do I need to hot reload the app, perhaps? I'm not sure why I'd have to do that. Oh, I guess.
Do you need a value key on that?
Ah, good point. So the animated switcher looks at the child widget, and if the key is different, then it's going to animate. So again, I made a mistake here. Pretty easy mistake to make. It's a good learning opportunity for us. So I'm going to say value key, and I'm going to give it my question. So for the purposes of this app, the question is a perfectly valid key to use here. Let's see, I messed up my parenthesis there. Now I can hot reload the app. And when I click Next, it did a little fade effect there. So I think the next step here is to start adding some special effects. So we kind of want to do a different effect here. I'm going to use a slide transition. So again, I'm going to use a curve and a tween, and I'm going to compose these together. So what animated switcher gives me, if I give it a transition builder callback, I'm going to take this out for now. So what's happening here is the transition builder gives me an animation, and that's that animation class that we talked about. And that's being controlled by the animated switcher, and the animation is being run by the animated switcher, but it's giving me an opportunity to customize the animation here. So I don't have to think about actually running the animation, but I can still kind of apply some curves and tweens and get a nice effect, and I can use any explicitly animated widget in the framework. So I think explicitly animated widget Flutter is a good thing to search if you want to go into the docs here. I'm going to go, excuse me. So animated widget is a super type. I misspoke. So it takes any animation and applies an effect. So again, like the implicitly animated widgets, we've got a lot of subclasses here, like rotation transition, scale transition, size transition. These all just apply different effects given an animation. So instead of taking a value, now we're taking an animation type. Okay. So a few other things we're doing here is we are making a new tween that applies a curve to an animation, and that's called curve tween. And the way you do that is you create a new curve tween and you call .animate, and you give it that animation object. From there, I'm going to make another animation, which is based off our curved animation. So I'm going to say tween, and I'm going to say the offset is going to be slightly to the left, and it's going to end right in the middle, so offset 0. And I'm going to animate it with that curved animation that I just created. Finally, I'm going to use the slide transition animated widget, which takes the tween, or the animation, excuse me, of offset. So this is actually, the type here is animation with a generic parameter of offset. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's what slide transition needs. So we've taken our animation that actually just animates from 0 to 1, and we turned it into an animation that runs from one offset to a new offset right in the middle. And so what that looks like, if I go back to DevTools, and I'm going to enable slow animations again, I'm going to hot reload the app, and we're going to answer tween for that. And we're going to start over. So animated builder, click next. Oops, maybe we should hot restart. Now, when the question changes, our new card kind of slides in there. It still doesn't look great. There's one more thing we can do, which is, first of all, we can clean up the code. So there's also this animation.drive API. And so we're going to just replace this code we wrote with a slightly refactored version that takes our animation and calls .drive, and we're going to give it our curve tween from before. We're going to drive it again with our new offset, and now we have our same animation of offset that we can pass to our slide transition. We can hot reload that. See, the animation still works. And I'm just going to add a fade animation as well, just to be fancy here. And go back to our previous curve and offset animations. So I'm going to use the curved animation for both, so I actually need two animation types here for both of my animated widgets. And when I hit new game and change the question, that looks a little nicer, right? We're getting there. But notice that was really weird. Like, what happened when the card animated and it like pops in? Did everybody see that? Like, why did the layout of the card change right at the end of the animation? What's going on there? Does anybody know? Casey?
Because it's snapping to the new size when the new child finally comes in.
Exactly.
They're like tween sizes.
Exactly. So totally. So the animated switcher, it's laying out both widgets because it has to animate both. And what we need to do is we need to tell the animated switcher how to lay out both of those widgets as they're animating. So what we can do is customize the layout builder, which is the next step. So that's exactly showing what I just showed you, that GIF. So it's popping in at the very end because the animated switcher doesn't know how I want to lay out these widgets as they're animating. And I really want to align them to the top at all times. Yeah, so what Casey said, I think, was there's two widgets, and the size of both of them is taken into account when animating. So the way to do this is to specify the layout builder. So this code looks complicated, but all I did here, excuse me, copied the wrong code there. So this looks complicated, but if I actually go into the layout builder by command clicking into it, I can see that the default layout builder is just a simple stack. So this is actually how the animated switcher is laying this out, and it's aligning them to the center. So that's not what we want. We want to actually align to the top center because we want both of them to just kind of stick to the top as they're sliding in and out. So I think we can hot reload that, start over. I don't need to answer the question correctly. Okay, that's looking a lot better. Let's try again. Okay, cool. Yeah, they're both laying out towards the top. So that's the animated switcher class, and you've seen a little bit how to compose the animation type into other animation types. Cool. All right, everybody kind of keeping up with that? Kind of makes sense? Yeah.
If you had a column where everything was at the top, so like your answers, for example, were directly below it, you'd still get some snapping. Is there a fairly clean way to get that stack to blur between the size of the incoming and outgoing widgets? Like an overflow box or something that sounds kind of painful, or like a multi-child render object that'll sound kind of painful.
All right, let me make sure I repeat the question. So are you saying, is there a way to transition between the actual box size?
Yeah. So if you had elements directly below it, right now in your current design, they'd snap up as the size changes, but you want them to like fluidly to slide.
Yeah, I think you would have to, what you'd have to do is you would actually have to go into the transition builder, and it's not clear to me you would be able to do that easily. You'd have to measure the size of the widget. And the animated switcher is always going to just use that stack. You could try having a more complicated layout builder that doesn't use a stack and does something a little more suited to your use case. But yeah, we should explore that more. I think that's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not an easy way to do that out of the box. But
Thanks.
all right, let's keep going here. All right, so Justin, you want to tell us a little bit about animation controllers?
Sure. So with explicit animations now, we've been talking about the animation class. And the animation controller is actually a subclass of animation. You might have seen both around. And I think it's important to understand like what they are and how they relate to each other. And so basically animation has, as we've seen, like a value from 0.0 to 1.0 and a status. And animation controller, it gives you methods to change that value to like start, pause, things like that. And also the status. So when you want to be able to like control the value of an animation directly, you might use animation controller, whereas if you're just passing it through, you might use animation. So with some of these, when we want to control the value ourselves and control when it started and stopped, things like that, we'll use an animation controller.
Cool. So there's a few steps to do this as a developer. The first step is to use a stateful widget. The second step is to use this single ticker provider state mixin. Then we're going to initialize the animation controller. And we're going to make sure that the animation controller is notifying our view whenever it changes. So those are the 4 steps to do it. Do we have time? Let's see. How much time do we have? Does anybody know? I could copy paste or I could do it from scratch. I think I'm going to copy paste just so we can talk through it.
I think our break started.
Okay, let's take a break and come back to the animation controller. So we'll take 5 minutes and we will come back. All right. So yeah, we left off. We did some explicit animation effects, and now we're going to go even one level deeper. So we used a animated switcher which ran our animations behind the scenes, but now we just want to run our own animations using an animation controller. So we've got this file here called flip effect that we're going to create. I'm going to go new file, flip effect. And I think we're just going to talk through the code a little bit. So this widget takes any widget as a child, and it takes a duration just for convenience. And it's a stateful widget, so we've got to create our stateful widget here. And we're importing, or we're adding this mix-in called single ticker provider state mix-in. So Justin, do you want to share like kind of what that's doing and why we're doing that?
Yeah, so before when I gave my example of you could just do all this stuff on your own using set state, I was saying, oh, you could set a timer that is called once every 16 milliseconds, and that would be like running something once every frame. And that's a bad idea because probably for several reasons, but for one, you'll get out of sync with exactly when the device is trying to build a new frame. You might be called twice in the middle of one frame. A frame might be slow and take longer than 16 milliseconds. And so what this does, along with the vsync parameter that we'll see below, is it basically lets you tie in to when a new frame is being generated, and it lets you call something then. So rather than having to do something like set a timer, we can use this ticker provider state mix-in, pass this to vsync, and that is the way that under the hood we're able to update the animation once per real frame.
Yeah, so when we're passing this to our animation controller, to the vsync parameter, we're saying this single ticker provider state mix-in class is going to provide these frame updates to our animation controller. So our animation controller is doing the right thing here. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that this widget updates when and kind of only when the animation controller emits a new value by using add listener. So thing to point out here is that animation controller extends animation. That's an important thing to know. It is an animation itself. And it also extends listenable. So listenable is kind of this type that Flutter uses everywhere to define a type that emits values that change. So essentially that's what an animation controller does, is it emits a value that changes, and it goes from 0 to 1 by default. And the nice thing about it is that we can do things like this. We can say when the animation controller value goes to 1, we're going to reset it. So it's going to go back to 0. So animation controller has a lot of APIs on it. Reset, we can set the value directly if we want to. We can reverse the animation controller. There's a lot of things you can do on animation controller, and the API docs are a good place to go for that. If I go to animation controller Flutter, we can kind of see what all the options are here on the right-hand side. So we can animate to a value, we can animate back to the beginning, we can fling it forward, we can repeat the animation. There's a lot of cool things you can do with an animation controller that just give you really direct control. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is this card flip effect. It's going to take our answer cards and it's going to flip them over when they change. So what we did here is we overrode the didUpdate widget method, which tells me when my widget gets a new child, or really any new attribute, but really any new child. So when the answer changes from one value to another, we want to know that so that we can run our animation controller. So we call this handle child changed, and that's going to keep track, for reasons I'm going to explain. We're going to keep track of our previous child widget, and we're going to run our animation controller forward to flip the card over. Nextly, we're going to use a explicitly animated widget that is kind of like Tween Animation Builder, but a subclass of animated widget called Animated Builder. And what that lets me do is call this builder whenever there's a new value in our animation controller. So another way you could do this, you could add a listener and call set state, but I'm choosing to use an animated builder here. I don't think it really matters, right? I think you could choose either one.
I'm pretty sure that's what it's doing under the hood. I haven't looked at that one in particular, but yeah.
Yeah. So animated builder is just another way to call set state whenever your animation controller emits a value, and basically call this builder. And the reason we're using an animated builder is because we want to use an effect that doesn't have an explicitly animated widget out of the box. So we showed, if I go back, if we go to api.flutter.dev, go to animated widget, there's a lot of out-of-the-box animated widgets that take an animation, but we don't have one for a 3D flip effect. There's no like 3D transition type. And maybe we should add that, but for now, we don't have that. So what we're going to do is we use an animated builder with this transform, and we're going to do this matrix 4 identity transform. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that to explain that.
Yeah, so transformation matrices, you might think, well, why don't we just have like a rotate widget or a rotate property or something like that? But if you haven't encountered transformation matrices before, the reason why we have to use, or we do use this thing that looks kind of complicated when really we're just talking about like how many degrees did you rotate or something, is because it works out really nicely mathematically, particularly because if you do several transformations added on top of each other, say, for example, like a scale and then a rotate or something like that, you might get different results depending on the order in which those transformations are applied. And so it gets really complicated quickly if you're doing maybe something like you have a app where you can like drag things around and zoom in on them or something like that. And so the user's dragging and zooming all over the place. You have a huge stack of operations that they've done. It's really nice if you can just compress that all into one value. And the way it works out mathematically, that one value is a matrix. And so that's why whenever you see a transformation, it will end up being something like this. And the other thing to point out with this is that these kind of operations are really fast. So built into like CPUs and GPUs is the ability to do matrix math like this in like a single operation. So you can like transform a pixel like in one single operation very, very quickly. So these kind of things work really well, and you'll often see that in transforms. But really, it's just like a 4x4 grid of numbers, and it works out to be a rotation or a combination of that and scale and other things like that.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, so we're choosing to use this rotate X, and what that's going to do is it's basically going to draw a line on the X-axis and rotate the card around that X-axis using our transform. So you'll see when we show the animation here, it's going to flip up like kind of like Family Feud. The child of our transform is a little complicated. I think actually we can clean this up. Do you want to try to clean this up? Maybe we should. You can see it's like kind of complicated, and I just kind of want to explain what this code is doing a little better. So we're going to use a Dart feature called pattern matching to do this a little better. Basically, we want to show the previous widget when the card is flipping. So if I go back to the, let's just skip ahead here and show what we're gonna be doing here. So again, we're transforming around the X-axis. You can see in that animation, and we want to show the previous value and the next value, but it depends on the status of the animation, because once the animation passes the 50% point, we're going to change the child. We're going to switch it from the previous value to the next value, the previous widget to the next widget. So just to make this code a little more readable, I'm going to do a switch. I'm actually going to comment this out for a second. So the child of our transform depends on the status of the animation controller. So I'm going to say child switch. And when we added pattern matching to Dart, one of the cool things we also added were records. So if you have multiple values that you want to switch over, I can use a record, which is defined using another set of parentheses. And the two values we care about to determine which child we're going to show are the animation controller.isAnimating value, which is a Boolean, and the animation controller value itself. Okay, so those are the two things we care about to decide what child we're going to show. So if, so we're going to switch over that. give it some squiggly braces here. Okay. And the pattern matching lets you pattern match on records. So I can do what looks like a record here and say, you know, if it's true, if the animation controller is animating, and the value is less than 0.5, then we're going to show the previous child. If the animation controller is not animating, false, and there's some other value, it's probably from 0.5 to 1, then we're going to flip it because our card is flipped over. So our child is going to flip the other way. And then otherwise, you know, excuse me, wait, animation controller value.
I think that should be true in the second one.
Yes, thank you. So we just want to make sure we're handling all the cases here. And if for some reason our animation controller is not animating, that means it's back at 0, and we just want to show the child. Okay, so that's a really cool way to show like what pattern matching can do here and clean up this multiple levels of conditional statements here. So final thing we need to do is we need to use our card flip effect. So if we go back here, inside of our question screen, we're going to wrap our, inside of the card flip effect widget, okay, so in our question screen, we have these answer cards that show these answer cards at the bottom. And we're going to wrap this card.filled with our new card flip effect widget. So I'm going to do, I'm going to search for an action called wrap with widget. I'm going to type card flip effect. That's going to take our duration. I'm going to say duration, let's say milliseconds 300. And that's all we need to do. I think we already gave our card a key, so I think we're good there. This was already in the code. So now whenever the answer changes, whenever this key changes, our card flip effect is going to notice that. It's going to notice there's a new child widget, and it's going to perform that flip effect. So let's do it in slow motion again here. We'll go back to DevTools, enable slow animations. Let's hot restart just for safety here. Shouldn't need to do that, but we will do that. And when I hit next, whoa, all our cards animated. Wow, that's pretty cool. So every card there, if you can see, the text showed the right thing as if the card was slipping over vertically. So nothing is upside down. Animation looks good. But it's kind of weird that they're all animating at the same time. So it'd be nice if we could kind of have them flip over one by one like real cards. So there is a way to do this. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to add a new field to our card flip effect widget called delay amount. So let's go here, add a double delay amount, and add another field in our constructor called delay amount. And it's just going to be a double, I think between like 0 and 1 here. And then in our card flip effect, where we're constructing our card flip effect, we're going to take whatever card index it is, we're going to reduce it by half just to save time. So let's see where we're calling that. So now each of our card flip effects, delay amount, so are going to take this index, and I'm going to have a different value of my delay amount for each card. So now what we want to do is we want to compose a new animation that uses a tween sequence. So you want to talk about tween sequence a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So before we saw how animation had a .drive method, which takes a tween and returns another animation. And I think tween had something, was it a .animate that returns an animation? So, but using, like you can call .drive again and again and chain tweens together this way. And you might have wondered like why that's possible. If you do that by passing like two curved tweens or something like that, the effect would be like they would be added together basically, which would be kind of weird. You might like have two curves just laid on top of each other. But if you want things to happen one after the other in time, that's a hard way, but that's what you want to do to make that happen. And once again, like Flutter has made that a lot easier for you by using things like tween sequence item, which we're going to see. It basically allows you to easily specify one piece of an animation which happens at a different time than another. And yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah, so what we want to do is to actually respect this new delay amount field. We want to keep our tween constant for a duration, which is defined by the delay amount, and then we want to run our tween afterwards. So you can imagine if we go back to, let's just copy paste and we'll explain it here. So let's go animation with delay in our init state of our card flip effect. And we've got our animation controller here. So I'm going to add a new field called animation with delay. And that's going to be, I think, just an animation of double. This goes from 0 to 1. Let's see. Oh, and that can't be final. That has to be late final because we're creating it, we're initializing it in the init state function. And now what we've got is we've got a new animation because we've called animate on our animation controller, which is an animation. We've got a new animation that runs these two tweens in sequence. So last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually take my animation controller duration and I'm going to multiply it by our delay amount plus some constant, 1. And that's just going to make sure that if the first card flips, it flips right away. If the second card flips, the duration needs to be longer so that the flip effect actually runs the same amount of time. So we're just going to increase the duration based on that delay amount. Reformat there. I'm going to take out some of these new comments. Sorry about that. And now what we do is, if I got my phone here, let me show my phone again. Sorry. And now we should see each card flip effect happen one after the other. So let's go back. Let's rerun the app again. I think my phone went to sleep. Any questions about tween sequence? Any issues with that?
I think while we wait, I meant to talk about train hopping too. We were talking about that in the break a little bit. But
Yeah.
For like really advanced sequences of animations, if you have a case where like an animation in the sequence is changed in the middle of the animation, and you want the animation to look continuous, so it doesn't just like jump to doing a different thing, but it actually looks as if it was, you know, like animating in this direction and then back the other way or something. We have a class called, I forget what it's called, but it involves train hopping. You can find it in the docs. That will help you do that and make sure that the values line up and you're able to switch to the next animation. And we use this during page transitions. If you like quickly move between multiple different pages with multiple different page transitions before one finishes.
Cool. Yeah, we won't see that in this code lab, but that's a really cool thing to check out.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see our card flip effect here. And click next. Oh, look, they kind of flipped over in a different order, like with a delay. So let's see that again. So we're respecting our delay here. So that's looking great. I think the next thing we need to do is talk about navigation transitions. So, Justin, do you want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. So navigation transitions are basically under the hood, again, just an animation that wraps the entire page. That's basically what it is. In the various places where you can change them, you just have a builder and you're able to wrap the widget tree in some widgets that do an animation. And we talked a little bit about like fancy train hopping animations. That's where you would do it. So you're able to change the default animation for all pages in the theme. There's a theme value for that. I think it's page transition builder in theme data. So you can set that globally for each platform, the default. Or if you want to make a certain page have a certain transition, you can use, like we've done here, page route builder. So if you're building your own page route, then if you scroll down a little bit here, so we have a page builder which builds the static page itself, and then transition builder is, like I was saying, it has a child parameter, and that is the result of the page builder. And then you're able to wrap that child in some animation that, in this case, just fades it in and out or does whatever kind of animation you want. And the reason why these two are split, you might wonder, like, why do we have two? It's because the transition builder will be called very frequently during the animation, like 60 frames a second or whatever. So if you probably have things that don't need to be rebuilt in your page, it's usually you just have a static page with nothing in it, or rather with nothing animating in it, that's moved on and off the screen in one way or another. And so by splitting these, we're able to reduce the calls to the page builder part of the widget tree and only rebuild the transitions builder part of the widget tree very frequently.
Awesome. Yeah. So you might notice here we're using just the default Android transition. Looks pretty cool. That is because in main, like Justin said, we're just using the defaults here. We're not specifying any transitions here. But let's go to our home screen. And let's look at where we actually push our question screen onto the navigation stack. So we're calling navigator.push, and we're giving it material page route, which uses the default transition for any material route. But we can customize it, like Justin said. So I'm going to copy our page route builder here. And again, what this is doing, Justin explained it, we're applying a fade transition now. So we're taking our animation, we're passing it to an animated widget, which applies this explicitly animated effect. So now if I hot reload, click new game, it fades in and out whenever I transition. So in your project, we have another way to add fancy animation effects for transitions, which is the animations package. So you can import without having to update your pub spec. You should just be able to import the animations package here. And what that is going to do is that's going to give me this fade through transition. And that is super cool because it applies a very specialized animation effect that a lot of material apps use. So if we go to pub.dev, we look at the animations package on pub, you can find more documentation here. But essentially what this is a fade through transition. So you'll notice that it's fading and also the scale is kind of increasing and showing up on screen, and it looks a little nicer, looks a little more professional. So I've done that. I've added my fade through transition. We're doing this the hard way, I should point out, because I just wanted to show that we have this fade through transition available. So let's hot reload here, and let's hot restart that because I think I imported a new library. So again, see that? So I'm going to slow down the animations in DevTools and show that again. But that fade through transition makes the new page kind of pop in and gives a nice effect. So there's actually a better way to do this. The best way to do this is to actually update our page transitions theme. So to do that, we're going to get into predictive back, which is another feature of this page transitions theme API that Justin has been working on. So Justin, you want to take that away?
Yeah, so predictive back, I mentioned, is a new feature. It will be default on Android U, I believe, but Flutter supports it right now in stable. So the feature is there, but your Android device might not support it unless you enable a developer option flag. So I have instructions here on how to do that. If you have the code lab up, yeah, it's that link right there. So you can set that on your device, and you also have to set a flag in the Android manifest as well, and then you can use this. So it's really like an upcoming feature, but fortunately Flutter has support for it right now. And what it is it sounds very fancy, predictive back, but really it's just when you swipe back on an Android phone, it gives you the option to like peek at what's behind that route and possibly cancel the back gesture by moving back. So yeah, here you can see this is the root route, so I'm actually peeking at the home screen of the phone, and there was a not root route, so I'm looking back at the route behind it. So this thing here that you see is all handled by Android. Android is the one like animating the app away, but there it's a page transition that's done by Flutter. So once you've enabled everything as you saw on that page, you can set the page transition to predictive back page transition builder, which supports this for these transitions within the app. And so by setting those flags and then by setting your page transition builder here, you can have like full predictive back support. And this will all be default in the future. Once Android U is rolled out, you won't have to set any of those flags on the device, and we will make predictive back page transition builder the default on Flutter. So all Flutter apps should do kind of what you saw there by default. And when we built predictive back page transition builder, we also built some kind of infrastructure to make that work. And so it's actually possible to write your own page transitions that react to predictive back gestures. So if you have custom page transitions in your app and you want them to have some effect when the user's doing that back gesture, you can tie in and listen to those gestures and still have like the system UI of like a back arrow and everything show on the screen, and should work out for tying into that.
All right, cool. Yeah, so should we show a demo of that real quick?
Yeah.
Let's do that. So again, I'm going to go to my phone here. Just to show you, I'm going to go into settings, developer options, and I'm going to search for predictive back. I'm going to tap on that. Scroll. It's going to scroll way down for me, and it's going to show me whether I have predictive back enabled on my OS, and I'm going to make sure I have that. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my Android. I'm going to go into our docs here to find the right configuration here. And in my Android manifest, I'm going to add this line of code. Open that up. And this is an application level setting, so I'm going to paste it right there in the XML file. And I'm going to have to fully restart the app here. Let's do that. Next thing I need to do is copy paste this code to configure the theme. So like Justin said, this won't be necessary in the future, but now we need to kind of work with what we got. So we're going to paste this into our theme right here. And I really like that fade through transition, so I'm going to set that as the default if I'm not on Android. And that's from, again, that's from the animations package. So That's going to make the default transition for all my routes use that fancy fade through that we just showed. And I'm going to hot restart that so that this page transition theme gets updated. Now when I hit new game, I've got my transition going on here. And I've got my predictive back working, maybe. Let's see. Hold on a second. There we go. So you can see it there. Got my predictive back. Where'd my app go? Shoot. Where'd my app go? Sorry about that. Let's just pop it back open here. Oh, I know what I did wrong. So we saw the predictive back work on the root route. It showed the OS behind it. But I forgot to actually go back to my material page route that we were using before.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to my home screen here. I don't need this page route builder anymore. I'm going to just revert that back to my material page route. And now when I go to my question screen and I swipe back from the side, I can kind of preview that home screen there. So that's really slick. And then from the home screen, if I swipe, I can preview the OS. So very cool.
Yep.
All right. And that's the step I forgot to do. So we can keep going here. So I want to use a fade through transition for the current question. So remember when we had our question card, if I go to the question card, we had a animated switcher. Unfortunately, the fade through transition effect doesn't work with animated switcher because animated switcher only gives me one animation, and the fade through transition requires an incoming and outgoing animation. So another thing the animation package provides is this page transition switcher. So I can copy paste this, or I can actually replace this animated switcher with a page transition switcher from the animations package. So I'm going to import the animations package there. Now this layout builder and transition builder don't really work. I'm going to copy paste the new version, which now has an animation and a secondary animation for the transition builder. So let's do this. Again, I don't need any of this slide transition stuff because we're going to use the fade through transition from the animations package. So let's do that. And let's get our app back up here. So yeah, the important thing to point out here is just that the fade through transition takes an animation and a secondary animation, which is provided now by the page transition switcher, which is a kind of updated version of the animated switcher widget. So now we should see an animation when we switch to the new question, and it's doing that fade through effect. So now every time I hit next, the new card is kind of popping in and it's looking a little nicer, and I didn't have to write that much code. I could just use the animations package for that. All right. Make sense, everybody? Cool. Last thing we're going to do is open container. Do you want to talk a little bit about open container and what that effect does?
Yeah, so Open Container is a class that also comes from the animations package. And what it does is it allows you to do typically page transitions in which, for example, here in this image, you may have seen this in Google Calendar. If you tap one of these calendar events, then the calendar event itself will look as if it's like opening up into the next page. And then also when you go back, it will shrink down into the same widget place that it was on the previous page. So Flutter animate package makes that really easy with this open container class, and just lets you build each individual piece, and then it handles all the animations between each route. So it makes it a lot easier than having to do that yourself.
Yeah, this is a really cool effect. For our app, what we're going to do is we're just going to take our question card and we're going to turn that into our open container. So let's try to do that. So what I'd like to do is when we win the game or lose the game, I don't want to show a modal. I want to show a open container that shows the score and maybe looks a little nicer. So let's see how to do that. So the first thing we need to do is we just need to do some boilerplate here. We're going to have a void callback in our question screen that shows the game over screen. So let's do that. Question screen. And this is our question screen widget. So this handle game over function that's defined down here, that calls show dialog. So that's showing our dialog right now. We can delete that. We don't need that anymore. And instead, we want to wrap, well, let's set this up first. So we want to call our show game over screen callback. So if we have a callback defined, we need to handle that case, then we're going to call that callback. And we have to do a little more setup here just because of the way open container works, where when the open container changes its state, we're going to reassign this callback just to make sure we've got one. And we're going to pass that to our question card now. So our question card currently just takes our question, and now it's going to take our handled change open container and our view model. So let's go to our question card and define that in the next step here. But first, we're going to leave that be for now, and we're just going to add our game over screen. So I'm going to copy paste this code. Right beneath our question card, I'm just going to define a new widget called Game Over Screen. Game Over Screen is a scaffold, so it's just like any other screen like you would show with a material page route. And it's going to show our scoreboard again, which we've already built. It's shown at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to show a few other things, and we're going to have an OK button. And when the OK button is pressed, we're going to pop the open container screen off. So user hits OK, and we're going to pop all the way to the root route. Okay, so that's just normal Flutter navigation stuff. The important thing here is that we wrap our question card with an open container. So we've done a lot of work to pass in this on-changed open container, our question, and our view model. So I'm going to define those fields in our question card. I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to just put those there for now. Then I'm going to put our required parameters here. So required this dot on change, open container, and our view model. And this is going to allow us to show the game over screen using the open container. So finally, final step here. We're going to wrap our card with an open container widget. So I'm going to go wrap with widget. I'm going to say open container in our question card. And our open container takes two callbacks. It takes a closed builder and an open builder. And so this is the unique thing about open container here is that the two types here are callbacks. So I'm going to actually copy paste this from the code lab. Bloop. Okay, there's our open container. Oops. Let's back that out 1 second. I'm going to actually just copy this whole question card class. That's probably what you are all doing anyways, so I'm going to do that. And this is the full, all the way from the background color through the build method. Just so we can get through this here. And my phone went to sleep. There we go. All right, great. Let's see, last thing. Got an extra curly brace there. Okay, format my code and take out some of these news so we can see what's going on. Now we should be able to see the open container do its thing when we win the game. I'm going to hot restart. And now when I complete the game, oh, cool. Yeah, so it opened from that card. Everybody got that? Cool. Now we might want to turn off the outgoing animation. Maybe we could do that. But I think that's looking pretty good. So there we go. And we've got the predictive back going. So that's looking pretty good. And thank you all for coming. You've learned a lot here. I think we've covered a lot of stuff. We've covered implicit animations. We've covered some of the basic intuition of what's going on with animations. Now you know what an implicitly animated widget is, what an animated widget is, what explicit animations are, curves and tweens, a lot of the animation stuff from the animations package, some utilities like animated switcher or page route builder, and how to customize the default animations and use predictive back. So I think that's a pretty good set of things we learned. So thank you all for coming. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. We've got a few more minutes. Any animation question at all, happy to take questions. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Have a great time at the conference, and yeah, we'll be around. So looking forward to talking with you. Thanks.